there are about 300 to 400 drones which were actually sent from Pakistani soil into India, and it continued all the way from Ladakh right up to Gujarat, both LOC and international border. So far as Turkey is concerned, Turkey is one of the leading manufacturers of drone. They have the drone technology and manufacturing capacity. And let us get it very clear. It's not that it's gifting drones to Pakistan. I mean, Pakistan is a major buyer of Turkish drones. In fact, Turkey markets it quite extensively. Apart from drones, there are also other military equipment which Turkey has been providing to Pakistan on commercial basis. I mean, there are 4 Milgem class corvettes which Pakistan has bought from Turkey. If I remember correctly, there's 2 which were made in Istanbul. Where one was PNS Khyber and PNS Babar. And then there are 2 others which are being built in Karachi shipyard. But having said that, Pakistan's support from Turkey or whatever it has got from Turkey is quite minuscule as compared to what it gets from China. For example, last year it was about $5 to $6 million only worth of equipment, military equipment it procured from Turkey. So that isn't much as compared to China.
Right. So, according to Indian intelligence inputs and sources, Turkish advisors were actively involved in helping Pakistani military officials plan and coordinate drone attacks against Indian targets. What's your comment on that?
Yeah, this is it's part of the package. I mean, when you sell a product, I mean, there is a service which is involved. So they were helping out. I mean, there's even before this conflict broke out. Even before that, they were present and trying to, assist them. This part of their contract, part of the package. You see, we should not read more into all this. The fact remains that Turkey, how it looks at India. I mean, it's a major strategic miscalculation for Turkey, knowing very well how and where these products are going to be used. I mean, Turkey has to see where what is in its national interest. I mean, is it doing business with India or with Pakistan? I mean, so that is why I would rather call it a strategic miscalculation. But so far as drones and other things, military equipment are concerned, Turkey is into the business of marketing these products irrespective of the buyer. And Pakistan, of course, is a major buyer.
Right. Ambassador, Turkish President Erdogan thanked Pakistan for its patience, and he said on Wednesday that his support to brotherly Islamabad would continue to stand by side, whether good times or bad times. So, how does Turkey view the terror attack that took place in Pahalgam?
You see, Turkey has been Pakistan's all-weather friend. It has always been by Pakistan's side, and at this point in time, Turkey, is with Pakistan, has been with Pakistan, but it is part of a larger agenda of President Erdogan. Erdogan has this, he's the only one who calls the shots in Turkey. And at this point, Erdogan's vision of reviving the days of the Caliphate glory and become the leader of the Islamic world. So that is something which, of course, not many people in Turkey are with Erdogan on this, but that's his dream. So it is in this context, I mean, Pakistan, as in anything which has got to do with Islam, I mean, Turkey is there. So, for example, and that is why it is always on the Kashmir issue, it has sided with Pakistan. Now, his reference to the terrorists who were killed in the Indian strikes and calling them as civilians and martyrs are a little off the mark, I would say. So there are Turkey in its process is crossing several red lines. So that India is noting as well. So I don't think this augurs very well. But so far as its friendship with Pakistan is concerned, it doesn't mean that, any two countries coming close together, it means that they are adverse to a third country. When we talk about bilateral relationship between two sovereign entities, the relationship has to be conducted bilaterally, one on one. We should not look at the other through the prism of a third country. In this case, Turkey looks at India through the prism of Pakistan, which is something which we cannot tolerate at this point. So, far as Pahalgam attack is concerned, we know that Turkey sent the message of condolence to India. So, which any other country, many countries have sent, and Turkey is one of them. So, these messages are diplomatic niceties, but then it has to be, followed by action.
Right. Ambassador, talking about India-Turkey relationship ahead amid Ankara's support to Islamabad militarily, how do you see the relationship moving forward?
See, one thing is very clear. It cannot be business as usual now. But Turkey is very important from our perspective. Why? It is its location, geostrategic importance of Turkey, its location, at the crossroads of Asia and Europe, and as a stepping stone into Europe. So look at Indian companies and many others who want to build Turkey or look at Turkey as an important base for third country exports. So, and particularly to Europe. Now, we have a major strategic interest in Turkey. Now, so far as Turkey is concerned, I mean, they are also plagued by terrorism, cross-border terrorism. So we have been trying to tell and convince Turkey that, look, we have nothing against your relationship with Pakistan, so long as that relationship doesn't translate against India. I mean, your proximity to Pakistan should not be to target India. Then Turkey in the process, I repeat, as it's a major strategic miscalculation, and they're losing the big picture. Now, so far as the future is concerned, there are a lot at stake. Obviously, things will slow down. But so far as India is concerned, I feel that we cannot have a knee-jerk reaction. We know what Turkey is worth, and we have to have a calibrated approach. We have to make staggered economic strides, but ensuring that the people-to-people contact and other things remain intact.
Right. Ambassador, just last question. Following revelations about the origin of drones used against India, traders and travel portals have called for a ban on products made in Turkey and a halt to any tourist travel to Turkey. What is your response on that, and how do you think it is going to have an impact on Turkey economically?
Ayushi, not many people realize Turkey's economy is in such a shape now. Hardly any business is translating into funds getting transferred into Turkey. For example, if about 350,000 Indian tourists visit Turkey every year, that's the figure, around that figure now. When the bookings are done, not even 25% of that actually physically comes into Turkey. So it doesn't help Turkey's earnings. In fact, many Turkish companies would like to accept the payments in dollars or in any hard currency, and which is made outside. So if the travel portals and the people do not want to visit Turkey now, that's a decision. Of course, there's a major emotional angle, and I feel it's very important for the people after what happened in Pahalgam and the way Turkey has sided with Pakistan. It is the decision which has to be respected. But so far as the government is concerned, I think government should be very careful in taking decisions. And, of course, it is important that, as I repeat again, it cannot be business as usual. But how we do it, it doesn't hurt India's interest. For example, there are many Indian companies who are operating in Turkey. Now, we have a trade which is bilateral trade is crossed 10 billion mark. Now, we do not want all that affected at the cost of Indian companies. But there are certain things we can do. For example, Turkey has major, it's a major big player in the infrastructure sector. In fact, they have contributed quite a lot here in India. For example, the Atal tunnel, they executed part of that project efficiently and associated with many other projects. Rail Vikas Nigam Limited is already signed an MOU, a major MOU with a Turkish company, and the project is in the works. There are many other projects which are done, and there are Turkish companies who are, for example, in our airports, there's a company called Celebi, which has been handling logistics at all our major airports, and they're doing it very efficiently. But at this point in time, when projects are coming up, we can cite, for example, on grounds of security or because of security concerns, we could debar a few Turkish companies. Not because we don't want them, not because we want them out, but it's very important in diplomacy that the messaging has to be correct. We have to have the messaging. Look, times are different. We cannot have business as usual. But at the same time, for example, there is a call that Indigo's, tie up with Turkish Airlines that should no longer be there. I don't think that's a very correct approach for the simple reason that it is more than Turkish Airlines. It is in Indigo's interest that this remains. So if we take that's why I say it has to be a very well thought out and calibrated approach. Indian companies should not suffer. And how it hits Turkey, that we have to think and plan. So, but at the same time, if people take a view of not visiting Turkey, that has to be respected. That has to be respected. But I strongly, I'm of the view that people-to-people relations with Turkey should be there. Turkish people love Indians, actually. I mean, having spent the time there, it is actually, it's one man who calls the shots, and it is his own vision that are actually Turkey in the path that it's going now. And its economy is in a pretty bad shape. But, but tourism, people not visiting, it's not going to affect Turkey because there's nothing more to affect. That money in any case doesn't go to Turkey.